Hello guys and welcome back. So let's keep on going with our coding. Next step we'll be setting up the inputs. Right, scroll down to here to the very bottom. You can see there is a setup player input component. That's where we do our input banding. Okay. Now the first thing we need to figure out is what kind of input do we need. Now we want to make things simple, so we're gonna just go up and down, left and right movements. So let me go to edit and then project settings. And by the way, because we have our map already, it's better to actually go to the map modes and say our editor start up map will be our game map. Same goes for the game default map. That way when the game starts, when we build the game and when we open that build, it's going to start with this map as well. Or when we open the editor, we're going to open the game. Okay, so now let's also just go to the game here. I don't have to save things in here. Right, so this is the actual game map we want to work with. Okay, so what do we want to do again back here to the edit project settings is the input. So we can go to the input here and we can go to the action mapping and then we can click 1, 2, 3, 4 times for up and down, left and right. Right, so I can say this will be called move up. Right, oops, yeah, it's gonna automatically expand those things, but you can also just do that. This is gonna be move down, and this is move left, and move right, because there's no, speed change. It's gonna be the constant speed going, keep on going, popping to the next position, right? So there's no way we can use, we could use axis, but I think it's better to keep those simple and make those just actions. Axes are the things that has a value somewhere in between, right? But for ours, it's either moving up or not, right? Now go to here and say this up button will be the W button, right? And the down button will be the S button, and then left will be the A button, and right will be the D button. So we have WSAD for moving up, down, left, and right. Right, those 4 directions. So let me go ahead and close it. Now back here to my Visual Studio, then I can start setting up those things. Okay. Actually, let me not do that yet. Let's go ahead and set up a few functions here that will move our snake. Okay. So here I'm gonna create a function called void move up. Right, now this does not have to be the same name as the name we named in here, but just to keep things consistent, right, I'm naming it the same as the things I typed in the input. Void move down, parentheses, column, semicolon, void move left, parentheses, semicolon, and void move up, down, left, and right. Right. Now those things are the same as the other things. They do have a virtual in front, which we don't have in here. When there's virtual, it means that a child class who derived from, we can derive something from a snake head, just how we derive snake head from a pawn. If there's a virtual here in the function, that means the child class can override those functions and do it differently, which we'll be doing one of the virtuals in the future. So don't worry about it. If you don't need it to be overridden by any child class or subsequent classes, then the virtual keyword will not be needed. Okay, and then void, the same thing here, the name of the function, and those ones are taking some arguments. We don't need any here, so we're very similar to this one. Okay, the override here means those guys are actually overriding some virtual functions underneath on the pawn class. Now again, we are not overriding anything on the pawn class, so we don't have to type in the override keyword either. Right, we just need to have a bare bone function declaration. Right, this is something we call function declaration. Right, it's a declaration when you don't see a body. You just specify what does this function returns. In this case, void, meaning that they're not returning anything. Right, you can call a function and you can define a function that's going to return you some information, like returning a number, returning a string of literals. Right, so if we don't need to be returning anything, we just type in void. Right, this is a return type. Right, and then you have the name of the function, in this case move up, down, left, and right, and you have the argument list, which in this case we don't need to take in any argument. right? There's some example here. You can see this is taking in this type of argument. This one is taking in a float number. This one, this begin play does not take in any argument, right? If you don't need anything, you still need to any argument, right? You still need to have parentheses just to indicate that this is a declaration of a function. Okay. So declaration only says this thing exists. It doesn't even have a actual implementation yet. So if you compile now, the computer will complaining about not able to finding a actual definition. Those things are fun because if you take a look at the CPP file, you can see they are having their implementation in here. Ours does not, so we have to do ours. Right, let me save this here and let's go here and start implementing those things, or basically just have something there. Or first I'm gonna say void a snake hat, because it's part of the snake hat, right? A snake hat column, that's the namespace, and then move up, parentheses, enter, and then 2 curly bracket. Right, let me do that again for a snake hat column, move down, parentheses, curly brackets. Now this is tedious, right? So that's why I use Visual Assist. For the next two, I can use the Visual Assist quick shortcuts, which is you just put your little blinky marker there, right? And you're holding down Alt Shift and I, Alt Shift I, and you can see it does that for you automatically. So to me, it's not big of a deal because I can just quickly do that with just Alt Shift I, and I got those things implemented. So those things are something you have to do if you don't have Visual Assist. If you do, then you can do it here. Of course, Visual Studio does something similar for you. Let me delete that move right. You can also ask Visual Studio to do it for you. You can right click and say quick action and refactoring, and then create definition in the CPP file, right? Right, you can do that here too, but that's popping up something like this. This is basically a little preview of what's in this file. You can close it, go to the actual file, you can see it's added in there too, right? So Visual Studio can do that. It's a little slow too, right, compared to Visual Assist. Okay, anyway, so now we have those 4 functions, right? They have nothing in there, so running them wouldn't do anything, right? But let's set up the input here so that when we press WSADs, those functions at least will be called, right? So I'm gonna do let me do ensure player input component. Okay, what this does is it's gonna ensure this thing's existence. If it doesn't exist, it's gonna complain. It's gonna throw out an exception, something we call exception, which will cause the program to crash, and it's gonna also promote some reasons why, right? And in this case, it's gonna say this guy does not exist because we want to ensure this thing exists, right? It's a critical gameplay element, right? It has to be in there. If it doesn't, something is wrong. Go back and check your code, right? So we want to be really strict, right? This thing has to be existing. Okay, and then we're gonna say player component, input component, right? This thing is the passed-in argument, right? So we can access it here. So we can say band action, right? Player input component will be in charge of inputting banding. Then you can call band action to band action you created in the editor here. In the input, it's in charge of bandings, right? The actions here. You can band those actions you created in the videos in the editor in here. So we're gonna band move up, the key move up, which is our W button. When W button is pressed, then whatever that's banned to move up will be called, right? So, and also you can indicate what kind of action on the button, in this case, i.e. pressed. So when the button is pressed, okay, we're gonna band it to this object's function called a snake head, the address of a snake head column move up. I can just type it in. So what this means is that whenever the W button, which is associated with move up in the input settings here, right? Whenever that button is pressed, we're gonna call these guys, right? Our snake head, a snake head move up function. Now there is an ampersand and there is no parentheses here. That's the big difference here. Ampersand means the address of. So it needs to go there, right? It needs to know where it is. So you have to type in the address of symbol here. It's basically an ampersand. And then namespace is needed. And then move up is the name of the function. No parentheses means we're not calling the function. We're just passing the function as an argument in here, right? And we can do the same thing here. Clear input component dot band action. Again, this is just going to be repeating here, right? We're going to do move down now. Right, same thing here, IE pressed, and then this, and then the address of a snake head move down. Now for the rest of the things, we can Control C, Control V, Control V again, right, to copy paste that, and then this is move left, and this is move right. Okay, now we can change those things also to left and right. All right, now those are the bindings, and whenever those buttons are pressed, right, those functions are called. And just to make things easier, we can do a login first to make sure that this step works. So I'm gonna type in ue log temp warning, and the thing we're logging is text moving up. And then copy that and put that in here, and in here, and just changing these guys to down, and then left and right. Okay. Now in terms of Unreal Engine logging, it's actually using a macro, right? You know it's a macro when you hover the cursor here. You can see there's a hash defined. That means it's not a function; it's a macro. And that's why you don't have a semicolon in the ending. You can add it, it's no harm, but if it's a macro, you don't have. So I think it's easier to just not do that so that people know we're calling a macro, right? Macro is basically similar to functions, but it's more flexible. It's able to stitch things together. It's able to define things in a way that is not symbol based. It's just plain words stitched together. So that's what they choose to do. I think a sophisticated logging system, right, and needs this kind of like flexibility. So what we're doing here is we're saying this is of the category temporary, right, and it's having the level of warning level, right. So it's not something critical; it's just a warning, and then we're typing in the actual thing that's logged out to the console. Okay. All right, now going back to our Unreal Engine editor, we're going to click on compile to compile it. Okay, the more code you have written down, the longer it's going to take to compile, so you need to give it some time. Right, so to test it though, we have to tell the system to use our snake head as the pawn, right, when the game starts. So if I play the game now, you can see I'm using a different pawn. I can even move around, right? This is something we call the default pawn. If you press F8 to jump out of the play mode, you can see we're actually controlling this sphere, which is called the default pawn. Right, we want to control our snake head. The way we change that is to go to the game mode. Game mode is the class that's defining the basic gameplay modes, right? What is the player be playing, right? Who wins, who loses, which map do we jump in to the next session, kind of thing. So this is basically what this is, right? What's governed by the game mode. So I'm gonna go to the game mode header file. I'm gonna create a public AC greedy game mode base, parentheses, and semicolon. This is the constructor. Now we have been doing this in the snake head. You can see now that's basically this one, the first one here. A snake head, the same name as this with parentheses. In the CPP file, you can see here it's written as namespace and then the name. So I need to create one here to define what is the default class for the player to be using, right? To be playing with. So I have to tap in here first. Again, let me copy that. Now to the game-based CPP file, I'm going to paste that in, column, paste that in again, parentheses, and then curly bracket. Okay. Now here what I want to do is default fun class default Pong class will be the class, our snakehead class. So a snakehead here, column static class. Okay, and parentheses. Okay, now it doesn't know what snakehead is. Again, every file is translated individually, so you need to include the necessary things. So I'm gonna include include snakehead .h to tell this file what this snakehead is. Now we're only including the header file because the header file has all the informations, right? All the informations on all the functionalities and properties this guy have, and that's enough for the compiling stage to work. Okay, so that's why you don't have to include the CPP file. I mean the translation stage, which is also the compiling stage, right? The same name, same thing with different names. So basically what we're saying here is that is now game mode. Okay, I'm gonna use the snakehead as the pawn for the player to play with. Okay, I'm gonna save this now and compile one more time. Okay, this is over. I'm gonna go ahead and play the game. You can see now we're still playing this. So I guess the reason for that is maybe we're not using that as the default game mode. So I'm gonna go to edit, project settings, and here in the map modes, you can see it's using game mode base. Of course, we want to use our C greedy snake game mode base, right? That's the one we were adjusting in here, right? So let's close that and play again. You can see immediately we're now, oh, we're still not playing it for some reason. I guess because I changed the constructor, I have to restart the editor, right? Anything you do with the constructor will require you to restart the editor by doing debug and start without debugging, right? That should refresh the necessary things for the engine to behave the way you want it to be. Okay, try that again. Because see now we're not able to move anymore, right? I can hit up, down, left, and right. You can see now I see on the console on the bottom, you can see move up, down, left, and right getting printed. That means our input setup is all okay now, right? We can write in whatever we want to those functions now to react to the player input. Okay, yeah, that's it for this video, and let's move on to the next one where we start setting up the actual movement. And we don't even have a camera yet, so we need to do that thing too. Okay, all right, that's it.